That's not only in Little Rock, though. That's throughout the state. And once we begin to come together, you know, I've been working with Frank Bateman about the black mayors coming together. And I want black pastors coming together. And I want us to come together. I'm serious, though.
Oh, Lord.
They were once upon a time. They were both educated.
Yeah, because the thing about it is, you know, the agenda is, you know, when we want to get elected, we roll up in the church.
Amen.
No, we're talking about some real talk now.
Yeah.
We roll up in the church. We may give a little money. We may fund something, and then we own, and we're expecting your vote. Well, we need to give you a reason to vote. You need to see me more than just, you know, when I want to get elected. But also, you all need to engage us. You need to call me and call on me and say, all right, you know, Representative Love, you said you were going to do A, B, and C. What have you done? And so it's reciprocity within it. But I say until we begin to be a more cohesive group and come together with an agenda, then I believe this is going to be an impediment, and this is going to prevent us from moving forward. But I believe we can. I believe we can move forward. I'm tired of hearing this talk about, well, this and this, that. No, we can move forward. Let's put the petty bickering aside, and let's make it happen.
Thank you. Reverend Jones?
If I could piggyback from Representative Love's comments and at least address part of it, I think this is a crucial element to moving forward. And what we can do. As I heard Dr. Abrams mention, as Representative Love was making his comments, the voter education used to come from the African American church. That was really, now obviously you can tell I'm not that old, but I understand the historic nature of the African American church. It was a civic society for the African American community. That's right. When you read your church bulletin, that was your newspaper. You understood what was going on, who was involved, what was taking place. And the reality, as I heard from the comments from the audience, is it's difficult to get black pastors together. It is. To say the least. One, you got egos in the way for many of them, but the other thing is, in reality, is that financial aspect. In the African American church, and this is a sad state of affairs, and I'm just a little old country preacher. Y'all know about us. I don't have any large congregation, any large church that preaches a certain topic. I'm more of a traditionalist in that regard. But there are so many churches who are in the midst of the word of faith, the naming and claiming, that sort of philosophy and idea. It's going to be difficult to be political when you don't understand the nature of that call in the Christian relationship, to try to make a difference, to try to make heaven, to try to make earth like heaven is. To actually work and to fight while we're still here. Most of the time we get in church and we pretend that what's going on the outside can't affect us on the inside. Right. To the point that we become so heavenly bound, as you heard the phrase, say that we're no earthly good. Right. So that is a crucial part of moving forward, that we understand the nature of the responsibility of the black church. That we actually go back and educate our community, support our communities, and as we make changes, we can see those changes brought forth from the people that are involved in our community. They understand the community. They'll know the community, instead of, like Representative Love said, just showing up during election season, giving some money in the offering, and then expecting you just to turn out and vote. But it has to be a deeper connection. But that's a responsibility that pastors must take up. And we're too confused in dealing theologically with things that don't support this kind of idea. Because we know we're all about, you know, if I just get my $5 handkerchief and I'll be healed with my holy waters, you know, that sort of thing. That's not your tradition of Martin Luther King Jr. You won't be able to find a theology that will really change the dynamic of our attitudes as long as we're focused on the wrong thing.
Thank you, Reverend Jones. We'll close out with Jay and then Gary, if you don't mind. And just before you gentlemen begin to speak, we're going to move from this segment of how we move forward to some individual questions that we've lined out for maybe one or two panelists at a time, and then we'll move from there into our closing statements. And just for a small housekeeping note, if you've got your phones on loud, we'll give you a second to please cut the volume down so that it's not an interruption to our statements this afternoon. Dr. Barker.
I want to pick up with Ms. Abrams' comment about the caucuses, and I think that those auxiliaries have been the source, or can be the source of great power for this party, because they create leaders in communities that are kind of shut out if everybody's in one big group. But I think you're right. If those caucuses aren't talking to one another, two things happen. First, we have the ongoing factionalism, but we don't create the opportunity to learn from one another across lines of difference and see the ways in which there are some real shared interests. The members of the Hispanic caucus and members of this caucus have a lot in common in terms of what it is to be a person of color in this state, and also to come from communities that are underfunded and under-resourced in a variety of ways. I think that the Stonewall Caucus and this caucus have some things in common in terms of the civil rights laws of the state and the ways in which they limit the rights of certain folks. So I think what needs to happen over the coming year is that those caucuses really need to come together in joint meetings, and that joint endeavor will really pay off when, to go back to Gary's point earlier, when we move to the teams of folks who have to go out and win votes in 2014, who are comfortable and used to working across lines of difference. Because this election of 2014 is only going to be bad news for the Democratic Party of Arkansas unless folks really come together, work together on an ongoing basis with that mutual respect that has been built in the months ahead of that. And so that would be my kind of next step for this party moving forward in the next year, getting ready for the big election of 2014.
And I'll take it. I'm next, right, Eddie?
You are.
Thanks, sir. From there, I kind of laid it out, and I'll be brief here. I think the first step in moving forward is realizing where you are, which I think is what this today is all about. Understanding that there are headwinds that we're facing, all those things we talked about, the impediments earlier. And then the second step is getting started. And sometimes the hardest part about getting started is getting started, right? And so, I mean, my recommendation to you guys would be to set targets. Pick one piece. You can't do everything at one time. But both as individuals and as a caucus, set a priority for 2014 and then commit yourself to that. And as someone who relied on an all-volunteer source here, be committed. Don't be involved. Be committed. And if you don't know the difference, commitment involves sacrifice. All right? Commitment involves sacrifice. It involves going to work on a Saturday when you'd rather watch football, which for me is hard, but I do it. But be committed to that one target that you set as an individual, and then as a collective to the target that you set as an organization. David Pryor actually used to say it's a lot like, he used the analogy of a breakfast. The chicken was involved, but the pig was committed. All right, so you think you're having ham and eggs for breakfast. The chicken was involved, the pig was committed. Because commitment involves sacrifice. All right, put yourself on that plate. Put it out there, because that's what it's going to take. We are facing serious headwinds. I mean, I think to ignore that does us a disservice as a party and, specifically as a caucus. And then third, start at a local level and rebuild. I think you've got a lot of great case studies all around us from North Carolina, Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama. Those different states are different years ahead of us. We kind of held out longer with the Southern Blue, Dixiecrat, if you will, model of success. That is dying. We're seeing, I think, in Governor Beebe and Senator Pryor, the last of the titans that have been able to run as great government moderates and win in the South. That winning strategy is dying. We're going to have to start electing modern Democrats. And we should watch some film. For those of you who are sports folks, look to North Carolina, look to Georgia, look to other southern states where they have moved into electing modern progressive Democrats in a southern state and see how they did it and follow their model. And so I think we're almost going to have to start over and rebuild our party from the county level up, realizing that it's not enough anymore to win a primary and then you get the office. We have to fight for our lives here now. And I think having that realization, starting now, planning ahead, set those targets, and I think we'll set ourselves up for success if everyone is willing to commit themselves to that.
That concludes part 2. We're going into part 3. Gary, we're going to stay on you. I had the great pleasure to come down, not for a very long time, but sit in the epicenter of the Obama headquarters and make phone calls, and I was really impressed with the strategy and alignment of how you all were able to not only reach people at home, but in some cases I think the story was told that as the phone was ringing, sometimes there was also somebody either at their door or they're already getting a ride to the polls in some of the critical states. This next question here is primarily for you, given your expertise with the Obama campaign. What can African Americans, Hispanics, seniors, women, youth advocacy groups do to match the grassroots efforts of the Tea Party and other Republican-related groups as we move into the campaigns for 2014 and the future?
Thank you. I think the biggest answer is you got to find that passion. That's what drove all of my volunteers, is that they cared passionately about seeing the president win a second term. And I think it goes back to where I was on that last question, is a lot of times the Democrats that we have the choices of here in Arkansas, we may not be so passionate about. We support them because they're better than the alternative. And we like them when they do the right thing, but oftentimes we find they let us down. But find that passion, and if you can't find that passion for somebody else, find it for yourself and put your name on the ballot. But I think that's where it's got to start, because the volunteers that I had come in, I can't say enough great things about them. They did it on their own. I didn't even have enough time to ask and thank everyone that came in, because there was one of me, and we had an army here of people trying to help reelect the president. But the thing is, they didn't necessarily want me to have to ask them or want me to have to thank them, because they cared about the work they were doing. So find that passion, find that candidate that you can throw your all behind, or be that candidate that you can throw your all behind. But we're not going to be able to halfway do it anymore. And I'll tell you, as a political consultant that's worked in the state over and over, that's the frustrating thing, is to go to the same meetings and see the same people at the parties, you know, at the governor's mansion, at the fun stuff, at the inauguration. But then when you need somebody to pick up a phone or knock on a door, they don't know you, right? And that's the real difference. And I don't mean to be like that, but either you care or you don't, right? And if you don't care, go do something else. Find something you do care about, all right? But if you do care, get to work.
I think the gentleman clapping obviously so there's a lot to be said behind those comments, and Gary, we thank you for that. This question, second question, is geared towards Representative Love. What can the Democratic Black Caucus do to support and promote the agenda of the Legislative Black Caucus? And if you need time.
Well, no, I don't need time. I'm just. Here's the thing. Number one, even though the Legislative Black Caucus is all Democrats, we have to realize it's a nonpartisan caucus. So that's number one. We may have more things in common with the Democratic Black Caucus, but we have to realize that the Legislative Black Caucus cannot be the vehicle to be married to the Democratic Black Caucus, because we are nonpartisan. And right now we have a Green Party person in there who he was a former Democrat, but we have to realize that. But number two, though, the Democratic Black Caucus can do some really dynamic things, especially over in Eastern Arkansas, to where, and I'm not saying this wrong, don't get me wrong, that even though we had some good white legislators that did do some good things for their districts, it's a difference when you have an African American there.